Hello students, welcome to our new video that is on the chapter number 2, that is 2 and 3 wheelers engine. Right, in the case of the 2 and 3 wheeler vehicles, we are seeing about the engine of the 2 wheelers and 3 wheelers. Until then we saw about the engine, also we saw about the fuel supply systems that are used in the 2 and 3 wheelers. Next we will see about the auxiliary systems or the extra systems which are required in the engine to keep the engine in the running condition. The first thing that is required is the lubrication system. Right, the lubrication is required for the different function in the engine. The first thing is the components of the engine are reciprocating, right? So they are always mating with each other, they are rubbing with each other, so that the friction will always be present in the engine. And to reduce that friction, the lubrication system is required in the engine, and the oil changing at some regular intervals are also compulsory for the better engine performance. Without maintaining the engine for its lubrication system, the engine can face some serious problems in a long term. So we have to maintain the lubrication system, and the oil level should also be maintained in the lubrication system as well. The second thing which lubrication system provides is the cooling of the engine. 10 to 15% cooling of the engine is done with the help of the lubrication system. The lubrication system takes away the heat from the engine and it flows its heat to exhaust, or we can say flows the heat to the sump of the oil. So the cooling is also being done by the lubrication system as well. Also the third one is the cleaning, right? The debris or the extra particles or the soot particles which are being generated because of the burning of the fuel is being cleaned with the help of the oil which is used in the lubrication system. It takes away all the impurities from the engine and it takes into the sump of the engine. With the help of the sump, the strainer is used so that the debris will be classified or it will be removed from the oil and the new oil will be supplied. So this is how the cleaning of the lubrication system is done. And the fourth function that lubrication system provides is the sealing. The sealing between the piston and the cylinder. We generally keep a little bit of clearance between the piston and cylinder, and to fill up this clearance we use the piston rings. So this clearance will have to be filled with the help of lubrication, first to provide the reduced friction, and second thing, it will also provide the sealing so that the gases which are being generated because of the fuel burning in the upper part of the piston does not goes below the piston because of the sealing that is being provided with the help of lubrication system. And the third one is the noise reduction, right? The oil will provide reduced friction, it will also compress the noise, and the noise from the engine will be reduced somewhat with the help of the lubrication system. Next thing is the type of lubricants that we use in the engine. The first one is the two-stroke engine oils. Now in the case of the two-stroke engine oil, you might have heard about the word 2T mix. Right, in case of the two-stroke engine oils, the oil is pre-mixed with the fuel or petrol, and pre-mixing the oil the supply in the engine. First it lubricates the engine, and with the fuel burning the oil also gets burned and it is exempted from the exhaust valve. So the second type of lubricants are the dry lubricants. Now the dry lubricants are used when there are not possibility of using the wet lubricants, or there are chances of some damages if we are using the wet lubricants. Dry lubricants are generally types of the graphite and other materials which provides the lubricant or which reduces the friction as a dry material. Generally the dry lubricants are not used widely in the engine components, but where the dry lubricants are not possible, where we can use it in place of the wet lubricants. The next one is the grease lubricant, right? The grease, the component which is a semi-solid lubricant, which is generally used in the components where we require a sealing. Whenever we use the grease, then that component needs to be properly sealed to keep it in a lubrication manner, right? So if we are using the grease, then the lubrication needs to be sealed after using that lubrication process. Grease is generally used in the components such as bearings or the wheel bearings or the wheel hub, right? So wherever we require the rolling motion or the reciprocating motion, and where the sealing is possible after using the lubrication, there we use the grease in the case of the lubrications. And the last one is the synthetic oils, right? The oils which is being made not as a natural process but made with an extra processes or with a man-made process. That type of oils are generally used in the vehicles, right? The lubrication oil that we use nowadays in case of the two-wheelers is the type of the synthetic oil, right? That synthetic oil has a better life compared to the natural oils or the mineral oils, right? The synthetic oils comes in the different grades which has been defined by the SAE, right? So that SAE defines the different grades such as SAE 30, SAE 40. This type of grades are used for the different synthetic oils that needs to be used in the 2 and 3 wheeler vehicles. So these are the basic types of the lubricants that can be used in our 2 and 3 wheeler vehicles. Now, which type of processes are used in the lubrication system and how the lubrication system actually works? Right now you can see a lubrication system that is known as the wet sump lubrication system, in which you can see there are some basic components. First one is the oil sump, in which our oil will be kept in the level. Second is the oil pump, from which the oil will be pressurized, and then further it will be supplied in the oil filter. The oil filter will remove all the impurities before recirculating the oil in the engine, and with the filter we have connected the oil cooler, right? So oil cooler is required because when oil comes back from the engine after carrying its heat, it will have a higher temperature. So to recirculate that oil into the engine again, we need to cool that oil in the oil cooler before recirculating it in the engine. So oil cooler is required for that. Now let's see how it works in a brief. So you can see that when engine is working, the oil sump will have the level of the oil in its, the oil will be filled in the oil sump. From the oil sump, the oil will go into the pump where it will be pressurized. After pressurizing the oil, it will be further sent into the filter, and also it will be sent into the oil cooler. In the oil filter, you can see all the impurities from the oil will be removed. You can see how the oil is worked in the oil filter. The metallic particle which came from the engine or the soot particles, the impurities that generates because of the unburnt particles of the fuel will be removed in the filter. The filter works as a simple operation in which the oil comes and it will also be rotating. So with the rotation and with the filter plates, all the impurities will be removed from the filter. The oil will be sent into the components of the engine. You can see there are some plain bearings which is connected with our crankshaft where the oil is required to supply the oil. The holes will be drilled in the crankshaft. Also, the oil needs to be kept between the space of the piston and cylinder. The extra line will also be provided to supply the pressurized oil in that as well. Also, the oil should be there in the valves as well. Wherever there is a reciprocating motion, we require the oil for the lubrication process. So this is how the lubrication process in case of the wet sump lubrication works. There are other types of the lubrication system as well. The types that are used for the lubrication system, the first one is the two-stroke pre-mixed system. right? As we talked in the two-stroke lubricant. In the case of the two-stroke premix lubrication, if you might have remembered, in the earlier days when we were using the two-stroke vehicles, we used to fill the petrol which is known as the 2T mixed petrol. In that, the oil is premixed with the oil. It is been entered in the engine with our petrol, and with petrol it provides the lubrication, and also it burns with petrol and goes out with the petrol burning as well. So this is the simple procedure for the two-stroke oiling. Second is the port injection lubrication. There is an alternate for the two-stroke lubrication, in that the oil will be injected in the port. Not it will be premixed with the fuel, but it will be injected into the port when the engine is operated. The injection is different, but after process will be same, as it will be entered into the engine with mixing of the fuel. After, the next thing is the splash lubrication. In case of the splash lubrication, the crankshaft will splash the lubrication with the rotating force, which will be kept below the crankshaft, or in the crankcase, that will be splashed with the motion of the lubrication crankshaft. Next is the wet sump lubrication that we saw earlier in the previous video, which was type easier. And the last one is the dry sump lubrication. The only difference is that the oil will be stored in a separate container, and it will not be stored below the crankshaft or in the crankcase. That was the case in the wet sump lubrication. So in the case of the dry sump, the sump which is being given below the crankshaft will always be in a dry state, because there will be no oil left in that case. So because of that, it is known as the dry sump lubrication. Otherwise, the operation will be similar to the wet sump lubrication. This is the type that is the splash lubrication. In the case of the splash lubrication, you can see the crankshaft below provides you the process of the lubrication, or the lubrication will be splashed in the different components of the engine with the help of splash lubrication. Where splash cannot be reached, the other lines will be provided, such as in the case of wet sump lubrication, in the case of the splash lubrication as well. Generally, the splash lubrication method is used in the four-wheeler vehicles. In the two-wheeler vehicle, mostly use either wet sump lubrication or dry sump lubrication. So this was the basic types of the lubrication system. In the next lecture, we will see about the scavenging process that is required for the two-stroke engines. Until then, thank you so much.